Okay. I'll call the meeting of Recode Rowlett, call it to order, and I guess I'll be more formal. It's 5:25 p.m. There's been evidently some accidents around, so we're down on a couple of people that's on their way. As authorized by Section 551.071 of the Texas Government Code, this meeting is being convened, forget that, and we'll say an open session for the purposes of seeking information. The City of Rowlett reserves right to convene and recess and allow the regular session. I call executive session order of business at any time prior to the adjournment process of public input. If you are not able to attend in person, you may complete the citizens input form on the city's website by 3:30 p.m. the day of the meeting. All forms should be forwarded to the Recode Rowlett Committee prior to the start of the meeting. For in-person comments, registration forms / instructions are available outside the door in the City Council chambers, over to the right there. Number one on the agenda was the call to order. That's been done to citizens input. Anybody who want to say anything, citizens input? We have so many people beating our doors there. All right, we'll dispense with citizens input. Consent agenda. Following may be acted upon one motion, Recode Rowlett committee member or a citizen may request an item be removed from consent agenda for individual consideration. The only thing that's on there is 3A, which is considering approving the minutes of the previous meeting on August 12, 2025. Did everybody get in their minutes in the email? Have time to read it? Well, anybody want to amend or mention any corrections to the minutes? Hearing none, all those in favor of the minutes as printed, say aye.
In the motion?
I make a motion to approve the minutes of the August 12, 2025
Okay,
meeting as presented.
thank you, Tim. Is there a second?
I'll say it.
Good. All right, so all those in favor, aye. All those opposed? All right, so ordered. Let's have it. And now we go to 4A. Public hearing, comments, and so forth. Okay, there's nobody but us here. All right, so 4A, resume the zoning code discussion. Residential high rise, RH. And I think we also may get into something else on the commercial end. So with that, I will turn it over to Mr. Hall. Thank you. And I think we do have one visitor here with us that he will introduce.
Right, thank you. So, thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Before we begin to talk about the residential high-rise zoning district, which is going to be the last district before we get into non-residential zoning districts, I want to take a moment to introduce our new planning manager, Stephanie Singles.
Hello. Nice to meet y'all.
Started with us officially today.
Oh.
Stephanie comes from the city of Anna. She previously worked in the city of Frisco. And so lives close by in an adjacent community. I imagine, like me, she heard the great things that are going on in the city of Rowlett. And when presented the opportunity, she did not say no. So,
Absolutely correct. Thank you. I look forward to working with everyone.
When Derek says you live in a city adjacent to Rowlett,
nearby.
nearby. Oh, nearby?
Now, in California, we used to say everything was area adjacent. So it wouldn't necessarily be, it would be maybe 5-6 miles, but it was close enough. So she's Rowlett adjacent.
So where do you live?
I live in Plano.
Good, just not Wyoming.
Right. Okay, so we can get started. Want to thank you all for this opportunity, and just kind of quickly to go over, as Christoph has always suggested, let's talk about the meeting objective, and then we're going to bring back to you. You gave staff some homework, so we've done to the best of our ability to try to get as much information as possible related to other jurisdictions and how they handle high density residential developments. We're going to share that research with you. Then we're going to go into some non-residential zone characteristics, and then review of this first two O1 and C1 zoning districts. And then obviously some process feedback related to kind of what's been presented, and then ultimately some recommendations. So just in terms of meeting objectives, and this is great information for Stephanie, always a good reminder to the community. I've been stopped as I am driving around this great city of ours and saying, hey, I heard you talk about X, Y, and Z zoning. So we do have listeners and followers that if they don't catch us live, they'll catch us reviewing some of the recordings. But the challenge, as we all know, with the city of Rowlett having two zoning ordinances, the Rowlett Development Code and the Form-Based Code, and the vision is to create one zoning ordinance that encompasses zoning districts that are flexible enough to accommodate existing development and future development. That's going to be critical because we have development that's already here. Some of it has been developed on the basis of form-based code. But as we think through these zoning exercises, how can we be flexible enough to incorporate them in the Rowlett Development Code, and if need be, alter, amend, create new zoning districts that will help us, guide us, and get supported growth and development of the city. Remove confusing and conflicting development standards in the RDC, Rowlett Development Code, versus the form-based code ordinances. In my short time here, I've heard developers complain, I don't know which one to follow, I'm in this, but then the code is silent on this. Staff and I have had conversations about that. So hopefully, as we're going through these exercises, we can eliminate some of the confusion and conflicting standards as it relates to what one code offers versus the other code. Reduce requests for planned development. You will see in our presentation, you're fine. You'll see in our presentation that this city has over 30, count them, 30 planned development districts. That's a lot for a city our size, as you all can imagine. Also, under the umbrella of code enforcement, community development, we have code enforcement. It's a daunting task for them to have to know when they're in an area where there's a PD, to have to look at the specific development standards to know what is compliant and what is not. Develop a zoning ordinance that addresses compatibility standards and mitigates potential impacts. So, as we look at our border areas and look at areas of development opportunity and potential, do we have competing uses that are adjacent to each other? Let's talk about adjacency. So that's going to be critical to make sure that we're always thinking about compatibility as it relates to any proposed zone changes or any project that's coming forward. And then finally, and I just added this one because this is always a given with the zoning ordinance, to ensure the quality of development is maintained throughout the city. So we want quality development. We want to make sure that our zoning standards are such that it yields, the highest and best use of land, but also it continues the beautiful aesthetics of our city, both, on the landscaping front as well as just the general and overall construction. Any questions about our meeting objectives? Okay. So I also wanted to consider what I consider the zoning considerations. So here are some things to kind of ponder and think about as we kind of continue this exercise. We're going to have to, at some point, considering combining several of the non-residential zoning districts in RDC. In a minute, you're going to see, just in RDC alone, we have approximately 13, 14. Some of them, as it stands right now, we have properties currently zoned that have less than 10 properties in the entire city, less than 5 properties in some cases. Doesn't even make sense if we see a zoning district that's not being used to have it freestanding. I am encouraged by the participation of this group, and I think that we can drill down such that we can figure out how to create flexible zoning districts so that we don't have to have such an exhaustive list. This isn't a buffet, a menu where you select. You guys been to Yard House, right?
You gotta have your
They have the biggest
toolbox.
menu I've ever seen in a restaurant, or BJ's. There's whatever you want, they can give you. But in some instances, it works against you because it takes people a longer time to have to order the food. So, but what we're going to do is show you some data on what we currently have in the city that's zoned, and if it makes sense to continue to have some of these one zoning districts. Continue to allow for flexible zoning regulations, anticipate development, zoning districts for future growth and development and redevelopment. Find appropriate zoning districts for form-based code districts. So we've kind of done that on the residential side, but you were able to put some of those form-based code zoning districts in more appropriate RDC or create new ones. So continue that track. Ensure equitable allotment of zoning districts across the city. So not trying to cluster zoning districts all in one area, understanding that, residential communities by and large will need a commercial base. Where are their commercial services? Where is the services going to be? Limit requests of planned developments, which we just kind of talked about, and then consider some best practices for non-residential development standards. So that's what we're hoping to achieve on this next set of zoning districts that we're doing. Okay. So just kind of as a brief overview, we last stopped off at residential high-rise, to provide an intense residential housing type in uniquely dense urban areas distinct from lower density residential developments. And what we all discussed was the location of Sapphire Bay and the proposed high-rises that are going to go with that. And overall, it adds for a diverse range of housing types, sizes, maximum efficiency of urban land and infrastructure, promotes walkability, and it creates a distinctive urban skyline. Just some of the images of what is proposed for Sapphire Bay. Now, in our last meeting, we discussed, you all asked staff to go back and do some research, digging through some of the neighboring cities and looking at what and how do they handle high-rise residential developments. So today we're going to present to you 4 cities that we found different standards on, 4 cities that we have development standards on, and want to open the floor for some additional feedback before we then wrap up the conversation about high density residential. So one of the projects that we looked at, one of the cities that we were asked to look at was Grapevine. Like us, located on a lake, they have an old town area. There are some interesting development types. I was reminding staff that for a moment I thought we needed to include, the Gaylord Hotel and Resort, but then realized it's not traditionally considered a residential development, it's a commercial development, it's a hotel development. It's obviously taller, but by and large, they have no high-rise zoning issue. What they do have is a residential multifamily zoning district, but it restricts development standards such as depth, width, height. So for instance, for the height, I think it's, help me out here, staff. What are you saying?
35 feet,
35 feet.
2 stories, 35 feet.
So these are some of the images that we captured related to what this looks like. Primary structure shall be 2 stories, not to exceed 35 feet, correct. Secondary structure shall be 1 story, not to exceed 50 feet. Unit storage building.
How do they say they're going to be restricted to 2 stories, not to exceed 35 feet? Is that what you said?
Yes.
When those pictures are 3 stories.
Those are 3 stories. Let me ask staff, are these actual buildings from? So then maybe some of these were done under a PD then. That would make sense. if some of these were done. But typically, they're height restricted. This may also be regulated to, particularly, there should be a zoning for grapevine for historic downtown, and they will potentially have height restrictions. Although Hotel Grapevine, is about 5 or 6 stories if I'm not mistaken.
But this is for a no high-rise zoning district, right?
Correct, exactly. So they don't have it, in other words.
Gotcha.
But just wanted to bring you back to let you know.
Well, we already have
We
it.
thought, yeah, exactly. We thought that maybe they did, but they did not. But very close to them, the project that we did find, is Flower Mound. So this project looks somewhat similar to Sapphire Bay in the sense of a mix of high-rise and then some low-rise residential developments. They have elements of commercial as well. So this is a project that's currently underway. The building that you see is currently being leased. These are apartments. It's called 3111 Sunset. It's right on Lake Grapevine as well. And so with this particular project, they did a development it's a combination of a master plan amendment, so to their comprehensive plan, master plan, and then a development agreement, much like how we did Sapphire, through a development agreement. And between those two documents, they were able to carve out all the mixed uses. The illustration below is what you see here, are the uses in question. So by and large, considered a mixed-use development with an accompanying development agreement that also further regulates the height, density, the development standards for the parking, landscaping, setbacks, all of that. So they don't specifically have a zoning for high rise. They achieve it through a combination of a master plan and a development agreement. Any questions on this one? Okay. So then we move to the big daddy of them all, Dallas. And what we found in our research is that most of the high-rise apartments in Dallas are done through a planned development zoning district, which is kind of what we thought, right? And we even looked at a map. So all of the black and the blues represent all the PDs. So I was joking about our city having at least 30. Well, this is just a snapshot of Dallas, primarily in downtown. And then the area just north of it and a little bit south of it. And you can just see in that small caption, not Campbell. What is that?
There's over 800 in Dallas.
Over 800 PDs.
What's the difference between road and land?
I asked the same question. We don't really know.
I do.
Find out.
That blue one is PD 193. It's the largest zoning district or PD in the state of Texas. It's roughly the size of Rowlett. And it's one large PD, and it's governed by its own set of commissioners in addition to planning and zoning commissioners and city council.
Wow.
So they created additional steps to get changed in that PD. But that's that area between 75 and Lovefield, and then from downtown, from like the Deck Park to Lovefield, that's all one big
I
area.
wonder if that's because of the FAA requirements or, so you know, love fuel.
It's part of it, but there's actually an overlay for Lovefield that regulates height. So that's a separate zone district or overlay for that.
There's a lot of developments going on down there. A lot of construction over the last 10 years.
But in addition to PD, we did also find that Dallas has a residential MF, multifamily, 3A and 4A, and this gets at the heart of how they also achieve outside the PDs, how they achieve their high density development, residential developments. So PD R3 or MF R3, MF 3A and MF 4A necessitate and provide the vehicles in which they can do their developments. So that's Grapevine, Flower Mound, Dallas. And then the final one we looked at was the colony. We could find only one quote unquote high rise, 8 stories or higher, by and large, and the colony, and it is called Live Grandscape. It is done through a PD, but they have several mid-rise buildings, 4 stories, 5 stories, maybe max, that are done under a different type of zoning district. So the only high-rise that we could find in the colony was down here in Plantation.
So
Any questions?
Richardson doesn't have a high rise. I guess that's city placement would be considered a master plan or a PD or something like that.
Probably would. Now that you mentioned Richardson, I'm thinking right at the toll road in 75, there's a development there. There's a Whole Foods that is there. And I'm trying to think. Those might still be considered mid-rise buildings because I think they're maybe 5 to 7 stories. As I'm traveling down 75 going south to 635, I'm trying to think if there are any tall residential buildings, and I can't think of it.
Right, they're about 5 stories.
Yeah, they're about 5 stories. Now, going further up along 121, you might run into something. Does the colony border Frisco or Plano? Or both?
But
Okay. There might be some up there. We didn't look at those, but this is your particular one. So what we can see from all of this is that either, if cities outside of Dallas are doing these, they're doing them repeating. Again, we have come to learn the challenges of PD from an enforcement perspective. But the question then becomes, in a limited area, do we want to consider having residential high-rise in the city? And so we'll bring you back to what we prepared, and that is kind of the dimensional standards for which we will look at it. So you're taking advantage of height, you might have a small footprint, but everything is considered to build kind of within that framework. So your ground floor retail, your parking, and then in the sense of residential developments above.
I thought during the last meeting, we were interested in establishing a density maximum versus established by HEP. This was the reason why we asked them
Yes.
to go out and see what densities were. Go out and see that on our drive.
So what you received is the handout that was previously prepared. So when we talked about density last time, we talked about stepping it up from the previous density. I think what we mentioned was a minimum of 50 dwelling units per acre. Is the last discussion we had discussed as it relates
I
to.
thought we said 150 per acre was the max.
No.
I don't know that we gave a max, we gave a minimum. So it's a step up from the previous zoning district.
Because we were looking at averages
Yep.
in other places, thinking.
Do we have a density from Sapphire Bay? Density figure for Sapphire Bay by any chance?
It'll probably be codified in the development agreement. I don't know that at the time that we adopted it, if we just used the site plan and there were some assumptions that were made at the time, of the inclusion with the development agreement, but I don't know that we have density in there. But I will say, just in kind of dealing with this, with my previous experience, which is why you see,
Dallas was 90.
yes,
Or 160.
Was it no?
Maximum.
Next.
Yeah, maximum 90.
Yeah.
And 3, whatever, and then 4, it was 160.
right.
And 2.
Yeah. So 90 was for the lower.
Maximum density, 160 dwelling units per acre, per net acre.
Oh,
For
okay.
MF
Yeah, flip
4A.
between these two, sorry.
Yeah.
And then 3A was 90 dwelling units per acre.
Oh, and that's when,
Per net.
Preston and I were going back and forth between these two, and I think we were going somewhere in the middle. And that's where we came up with the average, and the average was I think somewhere around 130, and that's where, yeah. And that's what we're thinking would be reasonable.
Yeah. Is net acre, does that mean on the ground, or is net acre vertical?
So we call it floor area ratio.
It's all
Right.
percentage.
It's the-
They also be
it's
right
what is on the ground.
It's what's on the
If you guys
ground.
built more acres higher.
Yes.
It doesn't
That's
count
what's
anything
on
that's.
We,
That's the reason why the number's going up.
we
so
call it
much.
floor area ratio, so, but no, it literally means what's there on the road.
Okay. Rack and stacking.
Yes, but.
Well, I can't find my paperwork from the last meeting.
I think we're talking 130.
I remember
We were.
having that back and forth with him. I was just looking for those numbers, I was flipping back and forth here. So I didn't write it down. And that's, I think
Yeah.
where we landed was the one, oh, 150?
Yeah, it's whatever.
So 130
I think-
dwelling units
I
per
think-
acre.
Yeah, I think 130 might be more reasonable. Looking at the 90, 160.
And
Well, yeah, but the 90 is.
you brought up the point of the SUP, and you tell me, a project, as we go back to this, so having this type of zoning district, outside of where it's proposed with Sapphire Bay, but if we did get a proposal like this, what is the committee's feeling on how it's coming into the city? You know, they could potentially have it by right if this zoning district calls out the specific development standards. So the reason why established our SUP is put in so that planning and zoning commission and city council will have a chance to discuss the project and it not be any further. Because this is, we can all agree, this is very, very unique. This is gonna be the highest residential intensity in the city, right?
I foresee that outside Sapphire Bay, North Shore District is gonna be the only place that's big enough to handle something like this. Otherwise, you're gonna have to redevelop a lot of property to accommodate something like this. The biggest thing that I wanted to see is that it's tied to the commercial development. I don't want to see some 2 or 3 high rises on residential wind up in the North Shore and that's it. Yeah, does it produce income on taxes? Yes, but is it the best use for employment or for a combination of employment and commercial that we need to drive a tax base? I don't think so. That's just me.
Well, the reason why I don't think just leaving it as established by an SUP is good is because as a developer, he's looking to see what can be developed. He doesn't know what it is. He would have to end up putting something together and going in front of P&Z and council before knowing that yes, indeed, that would be an acceptable item. or no, that's just too, too many people, or, too dense. To where we at least give him the max there, and it still has to go through the SUP. I mean, we can still make it so that it goes through the SUP process. At least he knows right from the start, oh, I'm not gonna do it, that's not worth my time, or, I can't make any money on that.
But as far as the zoning district that's on the ground before he ever gets there. For instance, in North Shore, you've got zoning districts of new neighborhood, urban village, and so forth. That's all under the form-based code. It's on the ground that they can build by right if they meet the standards. And if we change the zoning or have the zone changed up there, then the question is, what are you gonna go to? And unless you couple that with commercial, if you just take some of the red and that's up in North Shore, that's new neighborhood, and you say, okay, we'll just make that still residential. That's all you're going to get.
Now, I think what you can do as far as what we want up there, I mean, I think I have an idea of what you're talking about, looking at up there, kind of like a state farm.
Yeah.
We can still have a residential high-rise zone in our toolbox, because I think everybody in this room is probably aware or understands that any developer is going to come in, it's going to be a PD. Okay, just because it's so different. But it's PD with a basis in residential high-rise and commercial C1. Okay, so now at least we establish some guardrails around what they can do or can't do in there.
Gives them a starting place,
Right,
our starting place.
right.
I was looking at some numbers, because usually I rely on Western numbers, for films. Mid-rise housing, 7 to 8 stories is usually 116 to 150 units per acre. And then high-rise is 140 to 300 plus. And so Mr. Cote was right. Yeah, what Mr. Cote was probably correct in that we probably landed on 150.
Somebody asked about the Sapphire Bay, so when did it develop the It basically adopts that site plan and has critical components, including 350 condo townhomes and 1,250 residential apartment units. It doesn't
We need to give them density.
give it a density, doesn't talk about specific elements of it.
But then again,
It's set on the site.
you can calculate based on the area that it's at and see what that density level is, which would, I think, be kind of interesting to know.
That's true, the site plan does to say this is where the residential units will go. You take that 1,000, which is a minimum,
Right.
and say it's at least this density, so it takes some additional analysis, but you probably could take that up.
So getting back to the point, I want to make sure we return back to the question at hand. So potentially having 150 dwelling units per acre up to,
Max.
right, max.
That max should be capital M, capital A, capital S.
And then the minimum can start where we left off with the previous zone district.
Which was 92, I believe. What did it say?
And what I found often with these, because there is a great deal of having to pencil out the development projects. To your point, Mr. Chair, oftentimes these types of developments automatically build in, just with the sheer nature of the residents that are there, they always have a component, they typically have a component of commercial. And hence that's why in Dallas, they call these, flower mound, they call it mixed use development, but they have these multifamily 3A and 4A, and then it talks about, and some general standards about elements of commercial.
This, and the name escapes me of the name of the, name of the development, but it's on basically the old Valley View Mall properties, one that's just recently had a lot of discussion on and lawsuits on.
It's pink.
What, do we have any idea of what the ratio is of residential component to, a commercial component?
I think the quick answer is different developers will tell you different things. I mean, there is traditionally a calculation made. It's always overwhelmingly residential, at least 70%. And then you have to also consider, if you're looking at the totality of the project, you have a percentage that's dedicated to landscaping, circulation, infrastructure, and then you have that.
And that's my point, is that it's the majority of it, of the units, if you will, is going to be toward residential. And that's, to be quite honest, that's what I'm afraid of. I don't want to see a plan come through and we are giving them the opportunity to give us very little commercial while taking out a lot for residential. So if it comes in as planned development, but they give us very little commercial and it's just stores, but a whole lot of units, that defeats the purpose of what North Shore / Research, Technology Research District was ever formed for. It's basically a business center, not a residential. Again, if a residential component, if a developer wants to come in like a State Farm, like John mentioned, where you've got 5,000 jobs potential over there in 3 towers, and then you have loaded residential around, I'm not going to be too adverse on that, but that's a well of a lot of employment. But if you come in and you reverse that with 300 residential units, and you give me not even a big enough property for a good-sized grocery store, much less anything else, that defeats the purpose. And the place where this is going to go in reality is North Shore.
So let me just make sure I bring us back to our kind of task force. So the points you made are valid, and we're going to get to them, but we're going to get to them when we start to look at the non-residential.
I understand, and John refers to the toolbox.
Right.
And if you're not, you don't go get a toolbox and start buying stuff to put in the toolbox unless you're going to intend to use it.
Right.
Okay?
It's my toolbox.
Unless you're going to use it, you're not going to go buy the stuff to put in the toolbox. So I don't want to put a bunch of stuff in the toolbox that I'm limited on what I can do because I'm so overloaded with things I really don't want on the ground. I'd rather fill my toolbox with things that I can put on the ground.
Right. And so my point to you is there is another zoning district that combines both residential and commercial.
Right.
It's not in the residential zoning district
Understand.
category. So we have to figure out if and when Sapphire Bay comes up, what appropriate zoning district will it be classified in outside of a PD / development agreement / it was done so many years ago, and it's survived some lawsuits and is moving forward.
And basically what we have found in reality in Sapphire Bay is residential.
Right now.
Yeah.
But the intended towers, we need to find a zoning district where it will fit. And right now, having gone through the last 5, 6, we don't have one yet. So what we're trying to do is get at what is the committee comfortable with in terms of this final residential zoning district, and then we will get to any combination of the sort or separate non-residential development.
And I'll say this one other way, then I'll shut up on it. Originally, in the original was 2 20-story buildings. Those were residential. One tower was apartments, one tower was condos. That was in the original. That doesn't really bother me if that stays in, and even to this day, if that was a possible thing. However, when you go put, regardless of the number of towers in there, and it's basically residential, it eats up any commercial land. And you're limited on the land space. I know it's a toolbox and it's not what's there, but again, what's in your toolbox is what somebody's gonna want to pull out and say, let's use it.
Just because that tool is in the toolbox doesn't necessarily mean that it's on our map. However, if they come back and say, hey, I want to do a PD and do something like this, we pick up that tool and say, well, if you were gonna do that, you're gonna have to meet these requirements. But if we don't have that, then we're just open to whatever they want to write down.
And I absolutely agree with you, John, on that. But what we're talking about is no combination. We're talking about strictly residential. Nothing else. It's just residential. So you put that in your toolbox, it's just residential for a high rise. And if
It's a starting point for the city to be able to say, well, we have this available. If you can incorporate that into your commercial residential portion, into your PD, make it a basis of your PD, okay, then you're good, you're
But
golden.
this has no PD to it. It is strictly
I understand
residential,
that.
John.
I understand, and we don't have any PDs in our zoning.
That's what we're trying to
But
do.
We haven't gotten
But
to it
every
yet, we do have.
PD has a basis that's in the zone. And that's all we want to do is be able to have that basis in there so that the city has a starting point of where we're comfortable or willing to go. Not that we're gonna do it, not that there's a single plot of land in Rowlett that's zoned for residential high rise, but it's there available to us to fall back on.
Then couple it with the commercial.
That's what the
And make
PD is,
the
that's
PD.
what the PD is.
Just, well then, why
So
make this?
because
Mr.
it's
Chair, if I
PD.
can, the
This is-
challenge with what you're saying means that if you were to create a zoning district, as you're mentioning in terms of incorporating another use, you would have to have thresholds for the developer to meet. So typically, in a scenario like what you're proposing, you would need to have language that's flexible enough to say, you can do up to 80% residential development, the remainder has to be some level of commercial. But typically, when you go through that analysis, there is some calculation, some, exhaustive numbers run to justify that this is the supporting commercial development needed for the residents that are going to be above.
Yes,
So if we haven't gotten there yet,
true. But if we're doing just high rise, we're denoting that high rise is residential.
it's a zoning.
It is a
type, residential.
standalone zone.
Correct.
It's not coupled with anything else or a PD that a guy's got to work with. If we use this and then you go back and you change the zoning anywhere in the city to where it has a high-rise zone, that is a district within itself. It has nothing.
And that's
to do
why
with
we don't do that.
That's right.
That's why we don't do that.
Well, not on high-rise, but we have done that on some
Well,
things
we're
as
not
far as.
talking, we're talking
Well,
about
fair.
high rise, right?
Right, I understand it, but there's no coupling, and I would be all for it if there is a coupling mechanism, which would be a PD. But if it's a standalone issue, and you don't intend to have it, why do you put it in your toolbox?
So to your point, as we had kind of shown you in some of the other cities, most of these developments are done through PD. There is what we call the underlying zoning district. The underlying zoning district is what we're really looking at. So that tells you specifically what the intensity of the project is going to be. So in the case of what we had seen in Dallas, for instance, we're looking at a PD with an underlying zoning district of MF 3A or MF 4A. So it's a PD, but there's an underlying zoning district that provides additional guidance.
And that, if we had that, and if we put it that way into the regs, I don't have a problem with it.
Okay, so
What we're talking about right
So-
now, as far as I know, is high rise by itself.
No. Read what Dallas says right there. Dallas.
That's Dallas. That's not what we're talking about.
Residential NF 3A. And what we say is RH. We're just gonna call it RH. Okay, so
If you have the basis being a PD, that's fine. But you're talking about a high-rise standalone zoning district.
no, we're talking about a high-rise standalone zoning regulations, right?
Right.
Not a district,
Okay,
okay?
all right.
And this way, when
My
somebody
place
comes in,
is, it's a district.
This is
Well,
not
some-
gonna give a developer right to come in
Right.
and just build a high rise immediately, as soon as we get this in their zoning code.
the only thing he's gonna be able to do is come in with a PD, and that PD's gonna have to have a basis,
Right.
okay?
Okay,
And so, there it is.
that
This
I
way
can
we
live,
can-
that I can live with.
Okay.
But just the standalone zoning,
If we wanted
Okay.
to, we could keep the 150 density and then still keep the SUP requirement, couldn't we?
Right, but you're also doing the same if the person comes in for a PD, right? So the SUP is a mechanism to get it in before the hearing bodies and to specifically apply for those development standards. The same can be done at the PD level. The only difference is that the applicant typically decides the development standards, the uses. So much like in North Shore, the east side of George Bush is a PD. But the underlying zoning, we just looked at this the other day, is like manufacturing and something else.
Commercial.
Commercial, right. So that's a PD, but it has different types of uses,
But again,
but they are underlying zoning districts within the code. So we could, the recommendation is established by SUP. You could change that to PD. If you're seeking this zoning district, you have to submit it to PD with the underlying zoning of RH.
but you can keep it as, right, the way you said, SUP.
Yeah.
Okay? Because if anybody comes in and wants this,
Right.
we're gonna say no.
Right. It is an exceptional use. It's
Well,
it's
it's not
a
gonna let
use.
it go by.
It's
Yeah.
right.
It's- you're
It's
not
a
gonna
use
have
like
some.
anything else we haven't seen in the state. So it's an exceptional special use.
Right.
so let me read you something here, and maybe this goes to the crux of my argument. RH, residential high rise, current zoning, urban village, UV districts, in FBC, and commercial center CC district in the FBC. Purpose statement, the RH district is intended to provide. If we won't change that and not a district, then this,
What are you reading off?
The purpose statement.
draft of what we were given this evening.
This is not designating a district for this type of property development.
That's what it says.
It's giving the development regulations if it is approved. So it's like the toolbox, we gotta have tools for that specialty, one little job that maybe you do once every 10 years, you got it in your tool for that thing you gotta do.
Then eliminate
When it
district,
comes necessary, you got it ready to go, but you're probably not gonna use it.
then eliminate district.
I think we still need the tool
Well,
because.
that's fine, you got.
If you want a state farm,
eliminate
here's the thing,
district.
if you want a state farm type of thing in North Shore, we need this so that the developer knows what the
Sure.
What the regulations are.
Sure, but,
And without that, I think it makes it much more difficult for someone to look at a plot of land and say, hey, let's go do this thing. And I just think it sets the standard so a developer can say, oh, that's something we want to invest some time and try to go through that process.
I don't disagree with you, Jonathan, except that this says that this RH residential high rise, the current zoning, are urban village district and the commercial center district. Those are zoning districts. And the purpose is an RH district. Now, if you want to take district out of it, I'll be a happy guy,
Well,
but
they all say district,
They all say
RH1,
district.
RH2, RH3.
We're
It's,
looking
it's
at
just
and-
nomenclature.
And
proposed.
the only thing that the reason why that's on there is to tell us, let us know that if we were gonna go ahead and have something, a zoning, requirement to cover an area in the city which is already developed, those would be the areas.
One area that we define when we apply
Right,
it to
or-
a map,
Right,
then that becomes a district.
or you could put a district within a PD, something like that.
Any
So we
area-
do have PD as a non-residential zoning district, even though many of them in the city are residential. But it's a specialty district where the developer gets to carve out the specific uses and development standards. Those are the 30 plus that we have all around the city.
and with each and every one of those, you have an underlying.
You have an underlining zoning district.
District.
So it's almost like we could do it both ways. You can say, it's kind of what the SGP establishes, that you can't just, in other words, this will never be a by right type of zoning district. You can't have this.
Mr. Hall, if you were to adopt this like it is, and anybody went through and wanted to come in with something and said, well, you have a district that's in your code for that.
They would first need to do a change of zone, right? So that would come before both hearing bodies. Because right now, we don't have anything that's
On the map.
orange, right?
You're correct.
Yeah.
You're absolutely correct in that. But if I had this, and there's not one single thing about an underlying district.
No, that is the underlying, it is the underlying district. It's just like, I come in, I wanna build a bunch of residential homes, and I wanna go ahead and take, SF10 as my underlying
Yeah.
district, okay? But it's gonna be a PD, because I'm gonna go ahead and build them in Muse, so I'm gonna get rid of streets, which I think is stupid, they're just basically the alleys, okay? But, so I'm gonna change some things that an SF10 would normally require me to do, okay? And so I've got to get permission to do that, and I've got to write it up in a PD. But again, I'm using the SF10 as a basis.
Right.
And how many times do people come in front of P&Z and say, I want to do this, and I want SF5, but then I want to go ahead and ask for a variance on front setback, side setback, back setback,
Right.
all that is, and you say, no.
I agree. But again, John, I'll challenge this. Where do you tell a developer that he has to have a PD?
I don't, but where do I tell my, he can build that? Take a look at my zoning map. Take a look.
If that's in your toolbox in the zoning regs, that is an applicable district that you
It
can
could
say.
be, it could be.
Now, what B and C would have to recommend to city council is denial of the guy's project because all he wants to do is a residential highway.
That's fine.
Well, it would
But-
have to be
But
in the
first off,
toolbox and on the
I
map
was gonna say,
where
first
he
off,
wants to build the project.
he has to go to P&Z to ask for an ordinance, for a change in zoning,
Correct.
okay?
That's right.
So if we change it to RH, we're gonna, he could very well use that to build a high rise.
With
But
the
we're not
provision
gonna.
based upon this with the SUP. So that makes it all, so there are two discretionary items if you follow that route. First is a change of zone. That goes to both hearing bodies. The second is an SUP, according to what's recommended, and that goes to both hearing bodies.
And the third is market demand.
Market.
And I mean, I'm no expert, I'm willing to be corrected, but I don't think we would have high demand for, I mean, Preston mentioned the higher you go, the more expensive it gets to build. I don't think, other than maybe Sapphire Bay on the lake, I don't think there's gonna be a true high demand for a high-rise apartment complex that would be, that we just don't have, it's just not the place for it. The only way I think that they would do that is if they did some kind of job building.
Big commercial,
Yeah,
something.
because I just don't, there's not enough demand to have a super expensive penthouse living in North Shore. Like in George Bush. I just don't see anyone who would do that. So I think the risk is super low. I don't think there's really any risk.
I mean, I think if we're talking in North Shore, which this is be blunt. The only place where you could consider something like this would be the North Shore. So I think realistically, you're looking at about 70-30 with what people would want. Would be some sort of like a 70-30 split in that area.
Well, and the risk.
When you get down, tax and building.
What do you mean 70-30? 70
70
30?
residential, 30,
Well, when we-
something, along.
When we discussed comp plan, and the reason I pulled that out is because a lot of the discussion was on North Shore, we were charged with that, and the discussion about Snake Park. At that time, pre-COVID, at that time, Geico was bulging at the seams in their office, and they were literally looking. And they were offering 3,700 employees. And I made the comment, because I knew that, I made the comment then, okay, to put a real face on it. If Geico wanted to come and move down George Bush and come to Rowlett and wanted to build something like City Place in Richardson, we could have the multifamily in there at that point. Now, I say that because featuring that Geico may once again get to the size of its offices, people are calling people back to offices, that they may wind up looking. And realistically, I want to see a Geico come in here, I wouldn't have a bit of problems with that. But what I don't want to see is the residential component to come in and the commercial all of a sudden be shelved, everything folds up. And we've committed ourselves to the residential. And when we go to high rises like this, that's why I want to make sure it's tied to either a PD or a commercial in some way, so that if things fall apart, it will not just go to the residential side.
And I think the little gecko came in here and wanted to do that, he wouldn't be lying to us. Because you have to trust him to buy his insurance. But I don't think anybody else is gonna come in and build a residential high rise. Because, again, they gotta get through P and Z on a zoning change.
Right.
They gotta get through the city on a zoning change. Then they gotta come back to us with an actual project, okay, that's gotta get through us.
Yep.
And even if they got it zoned, by the fact that it's zoned that way isn't necessarily an acceptable project for us.
Sorry.
And again, city.
I appreciate your passion on this, but I think we just need to get through this so we can at least have this portion done, so it's in the toolbox. And then on P and Z, if you want to deny a project, you can certainly vote that way. The city council can vote that way on the project. Doesn't mean that it's gonna happen just because we have the paper here.
I don't think it would get past the zoning change.
Yeah.
That's all they came to the table with was, well, we want to use this residential high rise. and stick it here.
Because they-
I don't think anybody thought
I think
Sapphire Bay
realistically,
would want
we're
to
not-
like it is either.
Yeah, with what little space we have yet, and we have to develop, I don't think, it's not realistic for us to waste that space. But something with such limited sales tax revenue. We're gonna put something in North Shore, that's gonna generate the maximum over sales tax.
I absolutely agree.
So,
We would like to. That's
so
for sure.
exactly, they got that.
But as the chair, I hear you, the majority rules, the majority says they want the sewer blocks as is. So I yield to that.
Well, yeah, but don't we have to settle on your one right, the 150 unit?
150.
Are we settling
Density.
units?
So
Density 150.
Yeah, exactly.
are established by SUP, you want to keep that there, right? Because you want it to come back, up to 150 dwelling units per acre. This is where the flexibility comes in with the developer, because in instances like this, they can take what is traditionally considered a smaller footprint, but because they're able to go up and be creative, they can achieve everything in that small footprint. And that's really why you see no minimum front, side, rear yard. It gives them the flexibility and the creativity. And then this maximum building height, 45 feet within a 20-foot, 15-foot of lot line. That's for if you have a portion of the building,
Sitting next to the,
sitting next to residential.
right,
That area has to at least be
step up. Before.
similar in size, correct? But it doesn't restrict the height of the overall.
Right.
So. Just for clarification. What do you all think?
So are we at a motion? Level yet?
Anybody else got any discussion? No other discussion? Well, I thought we were waiting on making sure the density figure. Do I hear a motion on the RH residential high rise?
I'll make a motion to approve the RH as presented.
With the addition of the 150.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Max.
I'll second that.
Oh, wait a minute, I'm sorry. Ability zone is too small. So no minimum size.
On each side, back,
No, I
front,
think that's pretty much.
that's the height,
Right.
these are the front and side.
No, I wouldn't say that. So I make a motion.
Are you sure?
Yeah. He won't give it to us to begin with. He could think it was appropriate, but. So I make a motion to approve the RH residential high-rise zone requirements with the addition of 150 dwelling units per acre.
I'm second to that.
We don't have a second.
Seconded it.
He said,
Oh, okay.
Oh, okay. All right, those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? It passes. Yeah, you gonna do anything with parking on that?
Huh?
You gonna do anything with parking?
That's the
on it?
first 10 floors.
All right, well, I still have a captured audience. That includes our discussion on the residential districts. However, I want to put a caveat, because as you see on the screen, we do have PD. That could be for any type of development, residential or non-residential, but we'll handle it separately. So I talked to the staff, I talked to Christoph about what I wanted to do as we move forward into non-residential zone districts, with the caveat that there may be a residential in PD. Just have to determine what it is. It's to kind of establish a baseline for the committee to kind of understand as we move into non-residential, what's actually out present. Meaning, what properties do we have that have the zoning districts in both our RDC and our form-based code that are non-residential. So remember, we handle new neighborhood and our residential zoning district from form-based code. And help me out, staff, what was the other one that was strictly residential in form-based code? We handled the other one, whatever the other one is. There's another one that we're dealing with in form-based code. We were able to shift it to a residential zoning district. So here, when we did an analysis, first off, there are 13 non-residential zoning districts in Rowlett Development Code. 01, limited office. 02, general office. IU, institutional urban. C1, C2, C3, all commercial. M1, M2, manufacturing. MU, waterfront, mixed use waterfront, take line, planned development, industrial overlay. Overlay, not specifically a zoning district, but an overlay, and then SUP, special use permit. So we have 13 in form-based code, 13 that are non-residential with the caveat that planned development may be residential and non-residential. The other 3 zoning districts in form-based code that are non-residential are urban village, urban neighborhood, and commercial center. So, I wanted to share with you all just some general statistics on what we found when we did the research. And as we move through these non-residential districts, we will continue to share this information. So in a city that is approximately 20 plus square miles, of all the potential properties that we have 4 properties approximately that are zoned currently 01. We're going to show you where those properties are shortly. In 02, which is general office, we have 1 property. It's a church that is zoned general office. Makes you wonder, we have all of these zoning districts, but we have very few properties where either the applicant is seeking a designation or we don't have a regular use of these zoning districts. IU, institutional use, 1 property, Rowlett High School. We have other high schools here. But when we went through our zoning, when we are looking, we can't find any other properties yet. It has its own special zoning district, 1 property.
So what's Coyle zoned at, or any of the other schools around here zoned at?
So we'll have to take a look, but they don't have this one. They don't have IU. So at some point, this zoning district came about. It was given to high school for whatever reason, but the other schools we can't see have that. C1, limited commercial retail. Greater than 10, but less than 20 properties across the city. C2, C3, most of our general commercial retail is along 66, which you would imagine. And then there are 2 areas along PGPT that have C3, commercial retail highway. Now, light manufacturing, general manufacturing, less than 5 properties in each of them, and they're right around the dark rail line. Again, to have a specific zoning district for manufacturing and to have less than 5 says a lot. We don't have a lot of properties with the zoning district. Mixed use waterfront, 1 property. Pecan Lane Park is all we could find. The take line, as you all know, is around, we have more than 30 or so planned development zoning districts. The overlay district is just south of 66. It includes that little area that we call light manufacturing between south of 66 and around the dark line, and then SUP, we have multiple spots. When we look at form-based code, urban village, we have an array around the area, which includes downtown and Bayside. For urban village, we have less than 5, all of them on Merritt Road, and including Merritt Road, and then some developments that you'll probably see soon, and then commercial center North Shore. So the reason why I wanted to include this, it shows to me, and we were talking through it with staff, that we have a number of zoning districts that are just not being used. So the question and how we are continuing this is, moving forward, let's see where there's some synergy between zoning districts and create a zoning district that's flexible enough that will allow the same general types of uses, but we have now taken out this variety of zoning districts that we don't need. Because clearly, we have quite a few. So tonight, we want to focus on O1, limited office, and C1, limited commercial. Now, this slide shows you for O1, this is limited office. The district is intended to accommodate low-intensity office uses of a size and scale that will provide a transition from more intense commercial uses and not adversely affected by nearby residential uses. Allowable uses include professional offices and limited personal services. These are the locations that we have in the city for a zoning district. About 4. And one we know quite well is because it's across from our offices. Right now it's single family residential and a farm. Someone is grazing cattle in that third picture. So is there a possibility to take this zoning district in the Rowlett Development Code and collapse it, combine it with another zoning district where you can still meet the intent? Okay. Another example is C1, limited commercial retail district. Again, we have less than 5 or 6 locations in the city. This is for limited commercial and retail. The district is intended to conduct of retail trade and personal service uses to meet the need and for the convenience of the community. So think of it as neighborhood retail, small scale neighborhood retail. So for a zoning district unto itself, we have approximately 3 to 4 current zoning on property.
We have 3 or 4 properties.
Properties that are zoned C1.
Right.
Yes.
Well, it's like, who's gonna build anything there on Castle Drive across the street from that rock crushing, concrete crushing plant?
Yes.
That is filthy.
But I bring this point up to simply say, when we're thinking about the flexibility and the utilization of our zoning districts, and we're going through this exercise of reimagining our zoning ordinance, these are important things to consider as we think about, maybe we have too many. We've been a city that's been around for quite some time. We get zoning when most other communities get zoning. And so why is there a lack of interest in these zoning districts? So I wanted to show on this picture an aerial picture of the neighborhood characteristics of the city, primarily north of 66, and then west to our city limits to Garland, and then primarily the toll road. And so 80–90% of all the commercial activity for the city is along 66, right? However, you notice I put circles. Those are potential areas, and some of those areas do have some neighborhood retail, right?
Some of us have neighborhood what?
Retail.
Yeah.
Small scale as compared to what's on 66, but you may find dry cleaners, you may find a tire, oil change shop, correct. You may find a car wash, you may find 7-Eleven, but very small scale individual developments along there. Correct. So my comments are limited commercial establishments for subdivisions. Now notice the need. So you see in that picture, all of those houses are not necessarily getting their needs met for commercial services.
They're getting their donuts met though.
They're getting their donuts. So either they're coming to 66 or they're going north along Rowlett Road, which then turns into Firewall Parkway and getting their needs met in Garland. Why? Because there's very limited to no commercial activity along that stretch. But that's a lot of people. That's a lot of residents and subdivisions that are living there, right? Generally built out areas, so new development must be in concert with the existing uses. So meaning there aren't as many large parcels for development, but those that are need to take into account the proximity to existing residential uses so that we don't have incompatible land uses backing into each other. New development should be scaled and complement the existing residential uses. So this is saying that particularly for commercial, not that we want to discourage it, but we want to make sure that it is in scale and that it complements those subdivisions where it butts it, right? And can provide the services. Typical residential pattern is single family development with some intermittent commercially zoned development or neighborhood services. So that's kind of the vision. And if we had another image, we could see further down where these different types of neighborhood commercial areas would exist. So probably can't see this, but I wanted to show you the,
Before you move on from
yes.
that, so why do you think that is not developed?
This is not developed, or why people haven't used these zoning districts?
Now go back to the other one, that one.
I don't know, quite frankly. It could be market conditions. It could be some constraints related to the
Which one is this?
site itself? Well,
I
the
think-
one at Castle, coming south from Castle to city limits on Rowlett Road, that piece of property slants down.
Correct.
A bad slant right there. That's the reason it's starting to build on the other. When I moved here, Kelso, a fellow by the name Kelso on the bank, on their property where the Quick Car and the Exxon station was. And that finally developed after he died, and it was sold. The other, you're talking about Rowlett Road and Hickox.
Right.
And I think the castle and Rowlett Road, because you already have in Garland a fairly established strip mall with a couple of,
Right.
a Whataburger, there you go,
Yes.
that's the attraction. And the
Nature,
grocery,
right.
grocery
Grocery
store,
store,
you know, that's relatively close.
Right.
You know, and so nobody's gonna come in and say, well, I'm gonna spot a grocery store here, they're all gonna come to me. Not.
But there is because I just went there. I have to remember we're being recorded. There is a cleaners and some other neighborhood services, right, that are there. So that is the type of services that you can drive out of your subdivision and get your dry cleaning, and you don't have to necessarily rush because you live so close, and you can cut it just before time, right? And you pick up your dry cleaning because it's around the corner. And then a donut shop, and I can't remember what, I think a State Farm, some more. Yes. But I just bring all this up to say, you know, as we're going through this exercise and we're looking at, well, we have zoning districts that are taking up space, you know, that are not necessarily, maybe people are confused about it, or maybe they haven't figured out exactly, you know, how they're, which of the zoning districts will better fit their project. And so the thought was, and in consultation with staff and talking with our consultant, you know, could we take these two existing zoning districts in the Rowlett Development Code and maybe create a new code that we call limited commercial that would allow both this level of office and neighborhood retail. And now you go from 2 zoning districts to 1. Office is typically complementary when we see these types of small scale retail.
Can we go back to your list of current?
Yes. So highlighting those in red.
Well, O2, why can't we go ahead and get rid of O1, O2, and C1 with a,
Okay, so let's go to, since you bring up O2, we have that now. I was gonna talk about that at the next meeting, but, so the district is a little bit different. And so you see the zoning that we have for O2. Rowlett High School. Don't know how I got that zoning district. Don't know who was here when we got it, but
wait a minute, I thought we're out in high school.
That was institutional.
It's across the street,
Institutional.
just north of the high school.
Yeah. Darker.
Oh, where the church is?
Yeah, next to the church.
right here, so.
Oh, okay.
Well, now, isn't that townhomes now?
It's gonna be,
Yeah, that's true.
it's changed, so,
So that zoning must have changed. Well, that was one of the only ones we could find.
yeah.
So that we go back to our number,
So O2, First Baptist, First
so we
Baptist.
probably don't even have an O2
Yeah,
if it's recently been changed.
Yeah,
We'll have to verify that.
the townhomes are next door to it.
Okay,
Oh, so there's still that's still there, is it?
Yes.
so the townhomes are here?
Yes.
Okay.
no, wait.
Yeah, that's the church.
No. See the little square at the bottom of O2?
Mm-hmm.
That's the electrical substation.
Yes.
Okay, and those townhomes, right, that property
Or sure.
wraps
Yes.
around.
It's gonna be right next to it, so there is another wrapping part.
So it wasn't all rezoned
No.
through the process?
Just that-
Well, yeah, but we're not gonna keep an electrical substation in O2.
Yeah.
And the intent, by the way, I didn't even talk about what the intent of O2 was. The district is intended to encourage moderate to high intensity office development in locations not adjacent to single family residential uses unless architecturally compatible and sited so that not to adversely affect adjacent residential uses or districts. If that's a substation, that is not what that was intended to be.
Yeah, that's an electrical substation.
But to your point, you know,
So,
can the recommendation of a limited commercial be encompassing of C1?
Well, I definitely think O1,
O1.
O2, and C1
can be all,
can be combined into one.
you know, most
Yeah.
offices are commercial.
What's O2?
General office.
More,
I'm sorry, not O2, C2.
Uh,
C2 is also
commercial,
like
retail.
Yeah.
commercial retail.
yes. So
For the next.
Yes.
C2
we're
is
gonna send those out to you.
commercial.
Yeah,
But I just wanted to have a general discussion first
sure.
as we start to look at it and look at kind of like the baseline approach, right?
Yeah.
Like, we're not talking about, so, you know, one of the things that Christoph and I have talked about, and I think we've discussed it, is what's gonna eventually happen is that we're gonna have these existing development projects, existing parcels that have been zoned, and how are they going to fit in terms of conformity? Do they have the development standards whereby, and can we reclassify them in one of these zoning districts that we're creating so that they are now appropriately zoned and they're not non-conforming structures, businesses, whatever the take may be, legally non-conforming.
John, can you take C2 and fold it into C1?
I think so.
I don't know if I can.
I mean, O1,
C3 is the shopping center,
Right.
basically,
Right.
type deal. So all the others are small businesses, small retail. That's what was featured for a neighborhood.
Strip mall,
Yeah.
neighborhood there. So we wrap O1, O2, C1, and C2 together.
Yeah, I don't know why you can't do that.
Look at this, we're gonna chop that list right down.
Now, in the event, because we should probably look at what a C2, and we have examples of that as well. We should probably look at what a C2 is realistically. Okay, help me out, Elise. C3 is on the, now. So here are C2s here, off Bush Toll Road,
Why would that not be a C3?
south of,
That should be C3 if it's highway.
South of Mill.
I've got that map up where
okay, I can't see what the crossroad is.
It's Miller.
Miller. So that's going to be,
You got C2 right at the intersection,
right,
C3 just on the other
west side, yes.
Yep. Then what are you looking for right above that's a PD?
Right, but we have C3 a little bit higher and then a little bit higher.
That's
they're
it,
right
and
on, they're right on the highway.
What?
C3.
Why would C2 and C3 be right across from each other both on the highway? What's
And there's a PD in the corner there. And a
We-
police-
The top circle is that the city-owned
Which one were you asking?
property. Christoph, is the top property that's circled, is that Miller Heights?
Yeah, Miller Heights.
That's city-owned property.
Or no, that's
uh,
that's Main.
That's the
Main
church.
Street. Yeah.
Oh, is that the church? Okay, then the second one down.
Yeah, so the second one is one of the
The
little.
C3 is city-owned property,
Yeah.
is that what you're talking about?
Okay, that's, all right.
why,
And
why
then
would,
the one below that C2 with a PD, that's the memory care center.
yeah, that's right.
Right next to
Yeah,
it.
that's right.
And so you got C2.
Right. Now, we can understand why these are zoned C3, because remember, commercial, retail, highway.
Why do we care? Why does that? Why can't we just put those on the one thing? Why does it matter? If it's on the
Well,
highway?
Because the highway is gonna be. more-
Just like we were talking about residential and we were stepping up as we
Yeah.
change zoning districts,
Okay,
there is a general thought in terms of commercial development,
that makes sense.
Right.
Yeah.
in terms of what you're dealing with. So for instance,
Like C1 is a little strip mall
Yeah,
in the residential
Right.
area.
that makes sense. Okay.
C2 would be
exactly.
something bigger.
Well, you're most intense, you want on major thoroughfares.
Yeah,
right.
So,
You know,
If we go back to so we have C2, we have multiple, which are, primarily north and south of 66. Most of it is zoned C2. And then C3, we have just a couple of properties, which are total.
Wouldn't that also include North Shore?
No,
I'm sure it's all currently formed-based.
it's
Oh, that's
form-based.
That's form-based, that's right.
Yeah.
It would lend itself to being rezoned to C3.
yeah,
Or
probably sooner than later.
we're jumping ahead, but we're going to propose one of the proposals that we're looking for to capture those form-based code zoning districts here, where there is a combination of retail and residential, is creating mixed-use zoning district.
I would rather see, when we're talking about North Shore, I'd rather see it be called a business center, and you can group everything into a business center.
So then that would be,
It would be a mixed use.
yes. Right. But even within North Shore, different parcels are going to be different types of activity. Right, so.
Well,
Yeah, but we gotta be careful about that because, if you think of North Shore as your commercial center, then you start chipping away at it with different things, that North Shore gets to the point where it's not big enough for a commercial center.
Right.
In fact, I think our form-based code has kind of proved the point.
But eventually, these are gonna go away, and we're gonna have to put these particular existing developments in a zoning district, right?
like I said, I would love to see it all go into a business center, because
Or commercial center.
What does that mean to you?
that can be a grouping of many different things. It could be office buildings, it could be some warehouses, it could be anything that's a commercial entity that goes in there, such as engineering. The engineering business will go in there, not necessarily in a warehouse or in a office building. But you could have where, and one of the thoughts was, and it was discussed at the time, Texas Tech, if we could lure them in and have a campus up there and have their engineering where they do testing on buildings and all. They're big in tornado, testing and so forth. It would fit into a district like that.
It sounds like anything but residential.
Anything but what?
Anything but residential.
Well,
Well, no, because we want to have residential in there too.
Otherwise, it's just mixed use.
well, I think what mixed use denotes is and you're right, residential could go anywhere in the district. And yes, the possibility exists for that to happen, but verification first is that the signal it would send is this is business. And if you want to come in with a component, you could have that zoning that we were talking about in the toolbox, that you could come in with some residential, but it's primarily a business, commercial.
How's that, yeah, okay, so commercial
Perhaps
center.
you could
Yeah,
propose,
commercial center.
perhaps you could propose some categories for us that other cities use that might be helpful.
But there's, of course, we had this conversation when we started this whole thing about the difference between zoning that is very specific and differentiates. Because you just went through 4 or 5 different uses: industrial, commercial, retail, residential, and certainly, and there's been this sort of paradigm in planning where you got very specific. You can't have this next to this, next to that. And then you have sort of this new paradigm in zoning in some areas where you allow a mixture of uses, but you enforce compatibility standards. So yeah, you can have medium density industrial use as long as it looks like a house and doesn't create an impact that's negative on the adjacent retail use. You know, that's a different approach. So, and that's what part of this conversation is about. You have all those different zones, because at one point the idea was, in fact, that's the difference between what we have here. You have the old model, we gotta keep it separated. And then it's like, we don't care as long as it looks compatible. That's basically the difference between these two zones. Form-based, how does it look? Use-based. Okay. So now we're coming and bringing that all together. Okay, we're getting rid of this. Do we move here, or do we move somewhere?
Yeah, we're not gonna get rid of it. We're gonna go ahead and reduce our numbers there and make it look pretty.
There you go. And actually, that's actually part of what we have said, is that we want to do this, but we want to have some compatibility standards so that, you know, maybe we allow things to office to be in C1, so we're allowing a little bit more mixture of uses. But we also want to put it on top of that some compatibility standards, which we talked about before, about, you know, buffers and height limitations adjacent to a single family, something like that. So there's a way to have a little bit of both.
Yeah.
And I think that what I'm trying to parse from Mr. Pollard's comments is that, what do you mean by business center? Because it seems like that encompasses a lot of this. Okay, so what does it not include? Because then
Take one. Just throwing that out there.
It definitely won't be taken.
definitely not done taking one. So because we can't define it until we know sort of what's the boundaries. And then we can always talk about how we overlay that with, again, compatibility standards to make those boundaries acceptable.
Talking about paradigms, the current, I would say, I may disagree with me on it, but the paradigm, I believe, when you toss mixed use around in this town, it's going to denote mainly residential, 1 floor of low commercial, and that's it.
1/4 of one.
That's generally what it is, though, unless you're
Okay.
doing a
So,
horizontal
but
development.
that's not what you want to see in the North Shore.
So perhaps this is a bigger conversation for our next meeting, like when we started the residential piece and we're trying to figure out which way to go. I mean, this is a bigger conversation than the 0
Well,
minutes.
Yeah,
7 o'clock.
I'm not meeting at 7 o'clock.
So let me ask you this, because we want to make sure that we have what you need for the next. First off, was this helpful for you to kind of see the analysis? Okay. So now what we will get you before the next meeting, we'll get you the standards for O1, O2, C1, C2, C3. And then we'll discuss what is the likelihood of collapsing and combining some, or do we need to, because C2 is really unique. It's primarily along that east-west corridor that bifurcates our city, cuts our city in half. Do we want to see that in other places? Does it need to stand alone? Or,
And let me ask you this real quick. Why is it C2 and not C3? If C3 is commercial retail highway, it's not 66 on highway.
it is.
It's kind of like.
It was the, right.
So I mean, those two should be.
I don't know. I wish I could go back into the heads of the community development directors and planning directors before me, but I don't know. We were just as surprised when we started looking at the map and doing a deep dive. We thought,
Well, I think
This
C2 and
is
C3
interesting.
probably can be combined for sure.
yeah.
C1, O2, and O1 is still one.
But we'll send you all, so that you'll have it before the meeting, we'll send you kind of like the same outline with the information. And the development standards, I started to put them in. You can't see them, so I have to print them out, but it just kind of, it's very flexible. When it comes to C1 and O1, there were no minimum widths, depths, lot coverage, or minimum lot area. There was some setbacks for front yard, and it references the adjoining yard and some other things. A little more specificity. Floor area, there was no standard, no development standards. There was a height restriction. So, not much of that is going to change, because as you all know, in these districts, we don't really have anything over 3 stories here, unless, we have a couple of apartments, but for non-residential, we don't really have that much.
Can you go back to your list of all of them?
Yes.
That's just hard for me to believe that less than 5 properties like we less than 5 properties shown.
Was in 5 districts. There's,
Districts. Okay, so there's,
yeah,
it's a whole spot.
basically.
Right. Some of them are like
Yeah.
one patch.
It's the M2 with the.
Covers.
That's coming now. Some, yeah, like it's some else properties,
Right. Exactly.
not necessarily number of businesses.
All right.
To Mrs. McKee's comment, it's now about 7:04 p.m. Is there a motion for adjournment?
I make a motion we adjourn at 7:04
I'm gonna keep going.
I do. I can keep on going. Is there a second to that motion?
Oh, thank.
Okay. All those in favor? Aye. Aye. Okay. We are adjourned for 2 weeks.